Welcome to the last stage of planking. Here we are. Since the last part, what I've done is to add the next two strips. The 18th strip, what I did was to add it in two parts, as I did with the first six. And the reason that I did that is because the last little part is very bent in this area, so I put it in water for about half an hour, and then I glued it on the normal style with CA glue in the back, and all the rest with wood glue. I've gone ahead and done the beginning of the 19th strip. The reason why I've made it so short is because it has to go over the step which is the top of the rudder. So the way that I'm doing this is with a small strip, adding it, measuring it, and then this last part I will glue it on with CA and a pair of pliers to hold it down in place, and that way once it's firmly on, then I can go ahead and add glue to the rest of the plank and add the front part as a normal plank. This way I can ensure that I skip this little step, and once it's on, all I do is to trim it, and then I'll add another small piece right in the back like this after putting it in some water, and then trim the whole area, and that should enable me to later on make it round as the instructions say it should be. Once I add the strip, I'll come back and show you where I am. Okay, now that the plank is on, the rest of it has been added with nails. I will trim this part off to leave it right at the middle of the frame to be able to add the front one. To do that, I can use a scalpel or just a razor to cut it right there, but I'll do that when it's a bit drier. Now that this plank is on, there is a little small gap the shape of a wedge. To fill that in, using a spare plank, I've cut it down to shape and sanded it so it fits in. So all I have to do now is just add some glue, add it in, and just like this other plank with the X-Acto knife, cut it off to trim it. And when that is done and fully dry, I will also trim the top edge of this so that it matches with the rest of the frame underneath, and that should take care of that step. And then the rest will just be a matter of adding all the strips down, and that should finish that part of the planking. When I'm a little bit more ahead, I'll come back. Okay, this will be the last piece that will go on to fill in the gap back here. What I've done is I've put this little piece in water for 24 hours, and now I'll wedge it in here and push it down so it adopts the shape. The best way to put it on then will be adding some super glue to make sure it holds on as well as possible. And a bit on the sides as well, so it shouldn't have any trouble. And now carefully adding it into its place, wedging it as far down as possible, making sure that it's centered. And now pushing it down for a while with my finger until it stays put. Once it is completely dry, what I'll do is I'll cut off the excess and continue on with the rest of the planking. There should be about 10 or 11 more planks to go, and everything should be all set after that. So just a while longer until it sets down completely, and then it'll all be set. Okay, I'm back. I finally finished almost all the first planking. I'm down to row number 31. So from row 20 up to row 29, I put them all as I did the other parts. The only difference is that I've left little gaps here, so as I was going down, these last ones were completely straight, and it made it easier. The last one is together with, on the other side, a little bit slanted because it covers the bottom stem of the false keel, and what this has meant is that there's another gap here, which will be plank number 30. So to fit that in, I've actually shaped a plank so that it fits in correctly in the gap right there, and all I have to do is with white glue and a couple of nails to put it right in there. These other gaps I've created wedge shapes from spare pieces of plank, and they will also fit in there with white glue, just pushing them in there, and that should work finely. And with that, that means that the main part of the planking is done. Only the stern area remains to be done. But that will be when I finish this, and I'll be back with you when I finish this part. Here we are with the last part, which is planking the stern section. Just as the instruction said, to plank this separately from the rest. The reason for this is because of the big angle, and the peculiar way of planking this is sort of a fan shape. I've already gone ahead and started, and I've added the middle part, and then on each side coming out I'm adding the different parts. The way that I'm doing this is I am grabbing the spare pieces of plank that I have left over, and I'm cutting them to shape so they fit more or less in there. Once I do that, I put them in water for about 12 hours so they soak up nicely, and this should be the result. Before putting them off, the best option is just to dry them out a little bit, and when that's done, to try them to shape right here. Putting a notch right in there, and then pushing it so it adopts the shape and ends up at 45-degree angle. Pushing it down, so it takes the shape a little bit. And to glue them on, I'm using super glue, since this is the quickest way that I can do that. Just a couple of drops of super glue on a piece of paper. And then with a toothpick, I wet the area where I want it to stick. Putting a special emphasis right at the top where the biggest bend will be, and at the bottom corner, and then just wetting the whole area with the super glue. Once I do that, I grab the piece, line it up where it has to go, and then hold it down for a while. This should take about 2-3 minutes, just to make sure that it's holding on as best as possible, and then I can let it go. So just waiting for it for a while. At the same time, it should start drying out, and that way everything holds on correctly. Now that it's dry, I can let go, and as you see, the piece of plank remains 90 degrees to the deck, but it's still pretty wet, so leaving it there for a while. Also, what sometimes happens is right on the edge, some of the fibers lift up. So what I do is, grabbing some more of the super glue, I rub it on, and then with my finger I shape it again, and that should stick well, and that creates a nice 90-degree bend almost. So with that done, I let it dry because the wood is still pretty wet. This other part, I did it about an hour ago with some side cutters. I go along and I cut off the excess, so it makes it much easier to work with later. Just carefully cutting it like that, and it goes away. And as you see, it's almost flush with the deck. The remaining part is pretty easy to cut off just with a razor blade, putting it at the same angle as the deck and just pushing it along cuts off the remainder of the piece. Leaving it flush with the deck. So with that all done, grabbing the 2 new pieces that I've already done, marking which one is left and right, and putting them in the water for another 12 hours, and then doing the next set. And that should leave a pretty nice bent shape that merges well with the stern of the ship. And here is the end result. The first planking is all done and finished, and including the stern, it had also been planked as the instructions stated, to put it in a fan shape, and that way all the planks can't bend to conform to the shape of the stern. So with all that done, now it's only a matter of sanding it and putting some filler on it to make it all as smooth as possible, and to give the best surface to add the second layer of strips. To give an idea of the numbers, out of all the strips that were required for the first planking, the 1x3, there's 9.5 of them left, so there's plenty of material left over. I've also gone ahead and cut out the 3 little pieces that I will need for the mast later on, so that's all done. And random pieces that have been left over, but according to instructions there's no need for the 1x3 in this size, so I can just use them as spare pieces. And the little bits and pieces of trash, I'll keep them until the end of the build, but probably I won't be needing those anyway. So this is the result up to date. Pretty happy. It's starting to look like a ship. And now onto the sanding and filling of this part, and then onto the second planking. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next part.